So this is going to be a presentation of photosynthesis that I'm going to start with. So the first thing I need to do is share a nice clean whiteboard with you. I'll just do that right now. Go. Okay. Okay. So photosynthesis. Yes?
If you guys have questions, put them in the chat. I will monitor the chat while Ms. Murdock presents. Sorry.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so photosynthesis is the topic today. So the simple definition of photosynthesis that you may remember from 7th grade or even before that is that this is when green plants use light to make sugar, right? Okay, so we're in high school. We're going to beef that up a little bit. Photosynthesis definition. This is a process, right? It is a process, meaning something that happens in a series of many steps. Process where autotrophs, and you should know what that word means, and if you don't, we will go over it. Autotrophs, which is any organism that can make its own food. Right? Autotrophs use light energy, hence the term photo, right? Light energy to convert inorganic molecules. Again, you should know what inorganic means. Inorganic molecules. Which other creatures would consider waste molecules, carbon dioxide and water, right? So those are the inorganic molecules. To convert inorganic molecules into food molecules, which are organic. Okay. That's a good, complete definition of photosynthesis, right? We're not turning light into food. We're using light energy to convert inorganic molecules into more valuable food molecules. All right, so now let's take a minute to review something, to review what we learned last week, right? Let's review just for a second because it all fits together in the end and I want to show you how it does. Let's review for a second. Let's think about cellular respiration just for a minute because it is so closely tied into photosynthesis. Cellular respiration. The definition of cellular respiration is a process, again, process, which is something that happens in a series of steps, a process where all living things, whether they're autotrophs or heterotrophs, all living things, convert food molecules, or the energy stored in food molecules, into ATP. Okay? All right, so you see how the word food molecule is in both photosynthesis and respiration. Food molecules are involved in both. So let's think about that in terms of overall chemical reactions for a minute, right? So let's look at overall chemical reactions. Overall reaction equations. Overall reaction equations. So a reaction equation, remember, is something where you start with reactants on the left, reactants, which are molecules that are the beginning molecules that you're starting with. And they go through a chemical change, which is usually represented by an arrow, and they are turned into products, right? And there might be energy changes in there. There might be inputs and outputs of energy and other ancillary things going on, but that's basically it. That's what an overall reaction looks like. You can have reactants on the left that are changed through a chemical reaction, which is what the arrow is, into products on the right. So if I wrote the overall reaction equation for respiration, let's do respiration first because you should remember what that is. The overall reaction equation for respiration. What are the reactants on the left side of this arrow going to be? Now I need your help. For cellular respiration, what's on the left? What's going to be broken down?
See what you got, guys. Glucose.
Yes, beautiful. Right, glucose, the food.
Sugar is glucose, yep.
That's right, that's fine, okay. And in aerobic respiration, what else is over here? In aerobic respiration, glucose is broken down in the presence of what? In aerobic respiration.
Oxygen.
Oxygen, beautiful. All right, good. So there's your reactants for respiration. What do they get broken down into over here? What are the waste products?
Oxygen. Good. What do we got?
Atoms are rearranged, right? Atoms are rearranged. Remember, glucose is C6H12O6, right? So what does that break down into? What products do those things become?
CO2, water.
CO2 and water, excellent, you've got it.
Nice.
And if we're going to be really numerically correct about this, you need 6 oxygen atoms for each one glucose, and it breaks down into 6 carbon dioxides and 6. So now everything's stoichiometrically balanced, and you'll learn that word next year. Don't worry if you didn't get what that meant. All right. And then is there anything else that's coming out of this that's really valuable, you know, for the cell to get work done? Like, these are waste products over here. They're not going to be useful to the cell at all. So what's the real point of doing respiration? What are we making that's really valuable?
Put it in chat, guys. I'm here. I'll answer. I'll tell you, Miss Murdock, when we say it. Come on. ATP.
Yes. And if you're really hot stuff, you know that you're actually making 36 of these for every glucose, okay? I'm going to show you. Oops.
And actually, Sarah, sun is not part of this one.
I wonder if it'll let me do this. Okay. So I'm going to kind of put where the energy is here. So this is going to help me. Okay, the glucose is where the energy is beginning, and then the ATP is where the energy is ending here. I just thought you might like that. A nice yellow thing there. Okay, all right, so that's review of respiration, right? Now, if we were to do an overall reaction equation for photosynthesis now let's do photosynthesis. Okay, same thing. We're still going to have an arrow, and we're going to have some reactants on the left and some products on the right. So now, maybe work backwards. What are green plants making? What's the major product of photosynthesis that you know? When a leaf is doing photosynthesis, what are the products coming out of the leaf that are really, really important?
All right, guys, put it in. Glucose?
That's it. Glucose is on the right side here. That's right. Glucose, right? And what else? What's a really important gas that plants make that we all need?
Oxygen.
Oxygen. You guys are awesome. Yes, that's it.
Oh,
all right.
nice.
Do you see a pattern here? Glucose is over here. Oxygen is over here. Look in the respiration equation. Do you notice what's going on? Can you see that the reactants of respiration are the products of photosynthesis? So what do you think is going to be the reactants of photosynthesis? What am I going to put on the left?
carbon dioxide, CO2 and H2O.
This is the trick, guys, is that the two reaction equations for respiration and photosynthesis, if you know one, all you have to do is flip the direction and you know the other one. So again, we can make it numerically correct, right? And we're making the same food molecule over here, right? Good, right? So the one reaction is the reverse of the other. If you know one, you can figure out the other one. So what's going on in terms of energy? Let me just kind of help you with that as well. So what I usually do is the source of energy here, right, that's helping this to happen is the sun, right, which is different. Respiration is not using sunlight to break down glucose. And where this is, the energy flow is going, so there's your energy, sunlight energy, and it's going into and being stored in the glucose. Right? So in terms of flow of energy, there's a difference. And in terms of what the products and reactants are, there's a difference. But it is kind of cool that the reactants, right, or sorry, the products over here, the products of photosynthesis, especially this right here, become the reactants in all of the cellular respiration, right? All of the cell respiration reactions on the planet. Every living thing has to do cell respiration in order to make the ATP it needs for its cells to work. Ultimately, all of that food comes from what plants make. And the energy that the plants used to get it was the sun's energy. So ultimately, all the food that we eat, all the powering of the ecosystems here on the planet comes from the sun and comes to us because of the work of autotrophs like green plants. Right? So the products of photosynthesis become the reactants of respiration. But then also realize that the products of respiration also become the reactants of photosynthesis. So these guys here also help supply the carbon and the water, right, that plants need in order to make the sugars. Plants need to have a source of carbon from somewhere, and they're getting that carbon from the air around them. And part of that carbon is coming from us breathing out carbon dioxide. Okay, so there's kind of a relationship there between respiration and photosynthesis that we'll talk about again. But that also kind of makes it easier to remember those two reaction equations if you understand that one is the reverse of the other. All right, now let's do a little bit more. Okay. Oops. Black pen there. What kinds of organisms do photosynthesis? Okay, answer me that.
Plants.
Yes.
Okay.
It's okay. It's okay. You can give me examples. Tell me what else. Are plants the only things?
Not animals.
No, animals can't do it. Fungi can't do it. Mushrooms can't do it. Remember that.
Protists.
Yes, very good. There
Bacteria.
are some, and bacteria, yes. Protists, specifically single-celled algae. Algae cells, green algae, and things like that can do it, okay? There are some bacteria, very rare bacteria, some bacteria that are very special. They're actually called cyanobacteria. Most bacteria can't do photosynthesis, but this one can. This cyanobacteria is a little green single-celled bacteria that kind of floats along and behaves like a single chloroplast, right? So all of these guys, plants like trees, like oak trees, like all kinds of, you know, oaks, roses, you know, tulips, grass, these are all plants, right? Obviously, they can do photosynthesis. Some protistans like algae, some bacteria like cyanobacteria, anything that can do photosynthesis is called an autotroph, right? Called an autotroph. Okay. So those are the organisms that can do the photosynthesis. Now the next question is, where? And let's stick with plants. Where in a plant, right, a multicellular plant, does photosynthesis occur? Let's talk about that for a minute.
Chloroplast.
Yes, very good. You guys are ahead of me. But let's go through the levels, right? The levels of organization. Let's be really, really precise about it because we're in high school and we're going to be precise about it. So, at the organ level of a plant, which organ of an oak tree is where you're going to find photosynthesis happening?
Ooh. What do we got? What do we got? Take a guess, guys.
The tree has organs.
Roots?
Just like
Not roots.
Not in the roots. There's no light under there, so there won't be any photosynthesis in a plant's roots. Or generally not in the trunk or branches either. Those are for support.
No. You think about it. Leaves.
The plant is green. Leaf is an organ, yes. In a leaf. I know it sounds like kindergarten, but that's an organ. Not, right? Not in roots. And generally not in stems either. Unless you have, not in roots and stems. Unless you have a green shoot, right? Or a grass stem. That's a totally different thing. But leaves are the organs of plants where you have photosynthesis. What about the tissue level? Tissue level inside a leaf, and you won't know this, I'm just going to tell you, is called mesophyll, right? And I know you don't know that word, but you'll see it and you'll hear it, so I want to know. I want you to make sure you know that mesophyll cells are the ones that have chloroplast. Within that, you have cells, right, that are called mesophyll cells. Within the cell, you have organelles, right? And you guys know which organelle does the photosynthesis. You guys already said it.
Chloroplast.
Very good. Okay, the chloroplast is the organelle that's only found in special leaf cells that can do the photosynthesis. Okay, let's go even tinier because I know you can. Which special molecule inside a chloroplast is most important in this process? It's a green pigment that actually captures sunlight energy.
Ooh.
Really important.
Chlorophyll.
Very good. Okay, and the reason I wanted to make sure we went over this is because lots of students confuse this and this. These are very, very different. A chloroplast is a green organelle that you can see in a cell. If you look under a microscope, right, you'll see chloroplasts. Chlorophyll is a tiny molecule that's inside the chloroplast. It's what makes a chloroplast look green. So just remember that the chloroplast is the organelle. That's the cell part that's doing the work, where the whole process happens. The molecule that helps with this work, that's inside the chloroplast and is too small to see with a microscope, is called chlorophyll. Two very different things. Don't get confused. Okay, now let's talk about the chloroplast. Sorry, that wasn't very good. Brushing. I should just take my my time? There we go. Okay. Okay, the structure of a chloroplast. Chloroplast, which is the organelle, not the molecule. Structure of the chloroplast.
There we go.
Okay, so we're at the organelle level here, right? We're not at the molecular level. We're inside a cell. Oh, I think go down. Oh, sorry. No. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go back up here. Just do it up here. All right. So here's a chloroplast. A chloroplast kind of looks like a slice of watermelon. It's kind of got a sort of a half moon shape to it. If you look at it in the diagrams in the book and you look at it in the animation, see about it. A chloroplast is this sort of bean-shaped thing that has some parts to it, right? So this is an organelle that's found in plant cells and only in their leaves, right? The organs that are doing this work. And inside a chloroplast, there are some parts. There's a part within a part. And they kind of look like these pancakes. They're these stacks of pancakes that are kind of connected to other stacks of pancakes. Got these sort of things. These are called, each pancake thing is called a thylakoid. It's called a thylakoid. And a stack, a whole stack, is actually called a granum. Granum. That's what the stack is called. And the thylakoids are where the first part of photosynthesis happens. And in order for that first part to happen, you need the chlorophyll molecules, which are found in the membranes of the thylakoids is where you find the chlorophyll molecules, really tiny molecules that you wouldn't be able to see, but you would see. That's why you have these green parts inside plant cells. It's because of these collections of chlorophyll molecules. And chlorophyll reflect green light, which is what makes the plant look green, right? So the chlorophyll molecules are these things here, and I'll just label that. The chlorophyll molecules, right, are right there, right there. And they're found inside the thylakoids, right?
Kind of look like cookies.
Okay, yeah, whatever you want to call them. Okay, so the first part of photosynthesis is called the light reactions. And they happen in the thylakoids, right? So the light comes in and is absorbed by the chlorophyll. And a couple things come out of the light reactions. You get ATP molecules, which are very useful. And you also get some high energy electrons that come out that are useful too in the second part. Okay. All right, so the thylakoids are floating around in this fluid. This fluid that's inside the chloroplast has a special name. It's called the stroma. Stroma is the fluid that's inside the chloroplast. Stroma is the place where the second part of photosynthesis happens, which is called the Calvin cycle. So this fluid here, all this stuff, it's just fluids, is where a series of chemical reactions happen, and you don't need to know them in detail. All you need to know is that they're kind of circular, and they need the ATP from the light reactions to happen, and they need those high energy electrons as well. And they also need something else from the air. That carbon dioxide I was talking about as a source of carbon. And what happens is this is the part that makes the glucose. And it uses the carbon dioxide as a carbon source. It uses ATP to help put the glucose together because it's a very energy dependent process, and it needs those high energy electrons too. And you don't really need to know too much about that, but this is the basics of what's going on in a chloroplast and what parts of the chloroplast are those things happening in order to make that glucose, which is the all-important thing that only plants can do. That they're the only things that can take light from space hitting the earth and use that light energy to convert what we would consider waste molecules, water and carbon dioxide, into that precious food molecule that then we all depend on for food. And then one of the other waste things that comes out that the plant might consider waste is that you also, from this part, is where you're getting oxygen gas coming out, which then goes to help with aerobic respiration. Okay, so that is all I wanted to tell you. I just wanted to give you a simple overview and a simple talk that will now help you to do really well in the Kahoot we're about to play together. Okay? Okay, Mr. Bouchard?
All right. Read something. All right. So, guys, what we're going to do right now, we're going to stand up. We're going to move